Mike Abb is not going to be in attendance tonight, we can go right into it. First is approval of minutes from June 23rd, 2020. We were all present for that. I did not see anything of note.
So moved.
Doug? We approved the minutes already.
All right.
Mary and Jerry seconded. First order of business, well, first, property owners. Is there anybody outside, Tammy? No.
I just checked.
Okay. No responses to any open forum from last week. So first, Article 3 is up for, we had a suggestion from a couple board members for an addition to Article 3, Section 1, under qualifications. It's adding a sentence that says, convicted felons and those required to register as a sex offender may not serve on the board of directors. A director that has been removed from the board of directors for cause is prohibited from serving on or running for the board of directors for a period of 3 years. So 2 changes. Discussion?
Do you understand what the rationale is for this? Do you understand what the rationale is for this?
I do. I understand.
Okay.
The reason behind this that I've been told by the people that have suggested it, of course, felons and sex offenders completely, I think everybody understands why we would not want that on our board of directors. Second, being board of directors not serving for a period of 3 years that have been removed for cause. I understand completely the reasoning for that. If you have been removed for cause, there was clearly a reason why, and serving with the very next year with the same board members that just removed you has got to be awkward for all involved on both sides. My only suggestion would be to limit it to 1 year, not 3. I know that, correct me if I'm wrong, Mary, but the logic was so the whole board turns over after 3 years. Possibly some might get reelected, but
Right.
it'd be a full board turnover to help that person serve with new people serving with him, her.
Another issue I can see with doing it for less than 3 years is that individual has been privy to information that they're no longer bound not to disclose. So they could use that information in getting reelected. So at 3 years, there's
That's a
probably
good
not anything left that might be confidential.
Doug, correct me if I'm wrong, but anything confidential is still confidential whether you're removed from the board or not.
Yeah, there is an expectation that if you're removed from the board that you would maintain that confidentiality. Whether we can enforce or bind them to that would be another question.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, my issue is how do you enforce it?
Yeah.
The only thing I would change is instead of a director that, say a director who, as
Okay.
opposed to a
I
thing.
couldn't hear you.
It's a net. It says a director that has been removed. I would prefer if it said a director who,
Oh, okay.
as opposed to an object.
Yeah, can't argue that one.
Yeah.
Good for you, Mary.
Jerry, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it makes sense. Working world, I've had to be on many committees, and if those person is removed from one of those committees and they're for some reason back in it the next time you turn around really quick, it becomes counterproductive to the committee moving forward because there's always headbutting from that point on almost. 3 years gives plenty of time for that to turn over. Basically, the board could potentially turn over and for new subjects to be up. So yeah, I'm for it.
At what point are we making for a decision for members that should be left to their own, though? If a director has been removed for cause, clearly it was something very wrong. But if they choose to run again and members choose to elect them, maybe that's not our place to stop that.
One of my challenges with
we are bound by confidentiality. They may or may not, if they've been removed. So let me use an example of an employee. Maybe an employee is terminated. They may go around and tell everybody that they were unjustly terminated, and you're like, oh my God, I have all this stack of paperwork, but I can't run around and say, look, take a look at the stack of paperwork. It was absolutely a just termination. They can say what they want. You can't. And so a board member that's been removed may spin a story, say what they want, but as a board member, you would know the truth, but you may know you can't say anything. We talked about last week at one of my former communities, we had a sexual harassment situation. It's not like we can run around and say to every community member, well, this individual was removed for sexual harassment. And that, once again, that was at a different place.
And then they could run again, and you still would not be able to do anything about that.
Yeah,
That's a very good point.
yeah. And once again, it was not here that occurred. It was somewhere else, but doesn't mean it couldn't happen here.
Mm-hmm. Really good
So,
point. Any other discussion?
I think make the change that Mary's put on and let's vote on it.
Yeah. Remind
Do
me,
we-
do we have to motion?
Yeah.
to-
Are we making a motion to move it forward?
Yeah.
yeah, as
Okay,
amended.
to the.
As
work-
amended.
To the work session,
Yes, to the board, yes.
to the work session.
Correct.
Okay. Then I move that we move Article 3, Section 1 changes to the full board at the next work session, which is this Thursday,
As amended.
as amended.
Now, I'll second.
Okay. All in favor? Opposed?
Got it.
On that side.
Got it.
So that moves forward. Next on the agenda is, make sure it's in order, Policy 1.07. Policy 1.07 is in regards to board meetings. There are no changes on this right now, Doug. This is as it currently is.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the reason I added this to the agenda, we all discussed and added this to the agenda, it's been brought up that we need to have a section, or suggested that we should have a section about emails. When it comes to the changes we're looking at right now, when it comes to virtual meetings only, and we are reading anything sent in from the membership, there have been some that are very erroneous, very hurtful, very vindictive to specific board members, and the feeling is that those should not have to be read. Things that are just vicious and have no bearing on business or matters or anything that we are discussing, just hurtful slander, should not be read. I have no proposed wording on that. I just wanted us to discuss it first to see if it was something we needed to ask Doug to formulate, some kind of stipulation on what should and should not be forced to be read in a virtual setting only. A member can still come to the meeting and say whatever they wish, and we hope they're more respectful than they have been in some emails.
Yeah.
Who would decide whether this is, yeah,
That's
and a
what my concern
particular
is.
email was,
If it was a swear word, that's pretty straightforward. But you could write something that's pretty horrible and not use any foul language. So Mary has a very good point, is who's the judge, jury on what gets read? That's a tough one.
we're at the second reading on this right now,
This is
aren't
the
we?
second reading, so if we made any additional changes,
be a
what we
walk.
could do is we could follow it up.
After.
Exactly.
So, we could what?
Approve this and then
Okay,
approve
go
this
back.
first. Doug talked about this. Approve the second
Reading.
vote reading on this,
Okay.
and then have a first reading on an
An amended.
additional change.
Okay.
It wouldn't be amended change, it would be an additional
Additional
change.
change.
Because since this had gone through the second reading, it's now official, and then here's
Yeah, brand new change. Just
brand new
start
change.
over. I
What
just
if-
don't
what-
know how. Go ahead.
What if we were just to say, members may send their statement to the corporate secretary 24 hours in advance of the meeting. Statements may be read aloud. We already took that out, didn't we?
I know, yeah, we discussed that one like crazy. and Agree that if a member takes the time to send an email, we should read it. It's just gonna be,
Unless-
it's,
Well, if they're either,
Are they complaints or is there value to reading a nasty email?
I see no value in just being detrimental to someone.
No, I don't either.
but again, how do you define?
Who chooses?
What's nasty?
David?
What's threatening? I mean, threatening would be one consideration.
If you go ahead and read one of those emails, it reflects more on the writer than it does the target.
I think that's very true.
Yeah.
And if you just go ahead and read it, people just get fed up with the person that writes that kind of stuff.
Mhm. I think our biggest issue would be who would decide. We don't
Yeah.
want to make the decisions
I
of what
know.
to read and what not to read.
This is just an option, but the only thing that comes to mind is the committee that it puts together and approves the agenda, which is the chair, the vice chair, and Tom. So in preparing that agenda, they could review, I'm just throwing that out there as an option, but that, you've spotted the concern that people will have who's gonna be on that.
But the
approving it.
agenda comes out long before 24 hours before the meeting.
Yeah, you'd have to potentially go back to that same committee and say, hey, we got this 24 hours ago.
Yeah.
Is this,
You could also reference the other policy about treating fellow members, employees, and so forth. So you could reference the other policy that's
Or-
already there.
Having read the statement or having listened to somebody at the microphone, the chair could, after the fact,
Mhm.
reference those guidelines that, or policies that say that the board will treat everyone with respect, and I believe it says members will as well.
Mhm. It does.
Which is, I mean, essentially really putting the guy down, or her.
Mhm.
But, I mean, that makes the point even stronger. Let them say what they've got to say, and, whether it's an email or they stand up at the meeting. And then, when they're done, or if it gets too bad, although in 3 minutes, how bad can it get? I mean, stop them in the middle of it and say, there's a policy for this,
Yeah.
and here it is.
I
What
agree.
if a member sent in confidential, anonymous? It doesn't say that we can't, we may not be able to confirm that the person is a member. Normally we can. Normally they leave their name down there and we can confirm that they're a property owner. But they could send in an anonymous one.
Why would
If it's
we-
anonymous, we wouldn't read it in the first
I know,
place.
why would you read it if it was anonymous? Because you can't confirm.
Oh, I'm all right, as long as that's understood.
Yeah.
I thought it is. Tammy? Do we confirm member comments before they're read? Okay. I thought so, because we had one for rules and regs before that was proven to not be a member, and I did not read it.
Yeah.
This is for virtual meetings only.
Because we can't stop them from saying whatever they want in public.
No, I have no problem with that.
Yeah. And shouldn't. I just
I do
kinda-
like the idea of the committee that puts the agenda together to make that determination.
Yeah, I mean, there's no hard and fast rules that you can put down for the committee. So, one month we may decide that this guy's email is threatening, and the next month we may get another one and say that it was just not polite. I mean, how do we decide between those two? I'd rather not have to decide. Let them speak their piece, whether it be in person or in an email.
Okay. I agree.
That's my take.
No changes. Carrie?
No, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that.
If it ever gets really bad or something is happening over and over again, I'm sure as a full board, we should discuss that
Yeah.
issue. Okay. Next is 3.04. 3.04 is on here because we had just, gone into 2020 and thought we had everything lined out. And we've always said things are going to come up that we did not think about ahead of time, that are new issues. It's going to happen. And it has happened. So at the last rec meeting, Branchwood was brought up for Branchwood Disc Golf. And I thought it'd be a great thing for rules and regs to look over 3.04, where it lists under section 2.2, it lists what is association guests are restaurants, golf, tennis, Metfield Park, Tanyard Creek, Blowing Springs, other paved and unpaved trails open to the general public for uses of pedestrian walking, hiking, jogging, cycling, and other human-propelled uses. That is the section where we did not include Branchwood Disc Golf. It's after many questions to many different people. I know all of us have been asking questions since the rec meeting. You did, even in it, if it was under golf or rec. What it seems like it's come down to is Branchwood Disc Golf is being managed by rec now, not golf. So
It
prior,
was managed by golf.
when it was a golf course, though.
Oh,
Sorry. Yeah, like
okay.
back when.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of, Tom, correct me if I'm wrong, because I am just going off of information I've learned over the past week, that Branchwood Disc Golf has kind of just fallen under golf umbrella and was never firmly discussed as a board of what we were going to do with it. So the reason rules and regs should discuss it today is to determine whether we want to suggest to the full board that we add it to this section of 3.04, where it continues to be a public use Branchwood Disc Golf area, or if there are no changes and it falls into a member and guest only area.
And I would say,
Does that
so.
sum it up?
Yeah, absolutely. And, golf is not involved. Our MAC department mows out there. Our golf pro is not involved in any way. I think what was trying to be said was they're trying to say it is similar to golf, not necessarily
Right.
similar as in that the same maintenance team that mows the greens takes care of the disc golf course. As in similar is in it's the characteristics of it are similar. But in the email that I sent to the board from the questions, I said it is a gray area. It is an area that was not specifically addressed in there. We tried to catch everything, and it's one where the board needs to make a decision of one way or the other. Now, the rec committee, management brought the special event to the attention of the rec committee so that they could approve it. So management did the right thing, even though it's a gray area. They did the right thing in bringing it forward, and the rec committee said we're good with that. But so we're not really talking about the special event. We're really talking about ongoing use whether the ongoing use is for public purposes or not. And that's a decision that the board needs to determine on, to make a decision on.
The walking path is considered private, right?
Yeah, in the memo that I wrote to the board, it's, you know, it's clearly a gray area. The walking path was always intended for the membership. Disc golf has characteristics that are similar to golf, and golf is open to the public. So those are contradictory statements.
Plus, disc golf uses the walking path.
And golf, yeah, so it is it's a contradiction. So we need the board, and there's no, you know, it's a decision that the board needs to make.
But in a case like the walking path at Branchwood, which we say is private, how do we maintain the privacy of that?
So, okay, rule and enforcement is different. Enforcement at any of our parks is by our Lakes and Parks Rangers. So if there is ever a situation that occurs, you would want to call the Lakes and Parks Rangers to come out. They do spot checks at our parks, but keep in mind that we typically only have one and at times two lake rangers on at any one time to cover 7 lakes. And I'm drawing a blank on how many parks we got. A bunch.
A bunch of,
You know, so they have a lot of ground to cover, so,
plus, we also established that nobody has the park ranger's phone number.
well, and that's the other thing we talked about is we need to promote the park ranger number to hopefully get people to have it written down, to call, because we don't field enough calls. But at the end of the day, it's a decision that the board needs to make as to where we want to go on this gray area.
Plus, in today's environment, I don't feel comfortable asking members to police anything.
Oh, no,
Because-
we're not asking you to police, we're just saying,
Well,
if you
just
see anything that,
Even if you see something, I mean, if the person that you're reporting knows that it was you who reported them, I mean, again, in today's environment, let's talk about these,
Mhm.
it's kind of dangerous. Can
Yeah,
be,
I
not
think-
necessarily,
I
but it
think the
can
easier
be.
one is, you're on the lake and you see a boat come by and they're too close to the shore, they're going too fast.
Or they
they're-
don't have a sticker on them.
You know, something like that.
Yeah.
We want you to call the Lakes and Parks Ranger.
Yeah.
You know, it's a little bit more challenging when you talk about the parks, but 2 weeks ago, we got a complaint from a property owner where some people were having a pretty rowdy event at one of our parks, and we called the Lakes and Parks Rangers and sent them out there, and it didn't have anything to, I mean, it didn't necessarily have anything to do with whether they were a member, because it turned out it was a member. It was more of, your event was getting a little out of control.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, to Tia's point, disc golf isn't mentioned anywhere. It's not on the 2020 plan, it's not under guests, it's nowhere.
No fee schedule.
Yeah.
Do we have any disc golf teams in the village?
No, I know that a number of our property owners play disc golf, but I'm not aware of any teams.
Yeah.
The other issue that I see is that course was designed by non-members, my understanding.
Yes, absolutely.
And they found us some really discounted good equipment to buy. I mean, we
Yes.
paid $16,500 for all the equipment on
Wow.
that course, when it
That's
should
cheap.
have probably cost us a lot more.
A lot more.
And that was through these non-members' efforts, and they also helped install the course.
Those are all absolutely valid points.
And they are helping to maintain it now.
Yeah, it's not unlike the trailblazers that go through and volunteer to take care of the trails and so forth. And without the trailblazers, you know, we'd have a challenge. And without these volunteers, we'd have a challenge also.
And how many people is that I just talked about?
I
handful?
I don't know. I don't know.
Well, if Joan said that last year, the first year of the tournament, there were 22 people, 70% of those were members, and the other 30%, so like 6 people nominally, were from this club or this outside whatever it is. So it's not a lot of people.
No,
And-
no, it, once again, it falls into that gray area. You have a very valid argument, and Branchwood is a private trail, and it is truly a gray area where, it's one of those situations where we come to the board and say, look, you know, we need you to make a decision on this. But you're right, as a result of the volunteer help, from non-members, we have, I don't play disc golf, so I don't know enough about it, but the course is highly rated.
Yeah,
It's-
and we've
it's-
benefited greatly.
Yeah, so.
Is there any way that we could, like, grandfather these 6 people, or how many ever it is, in and give them honorary membership or something? I mean, they have
no.
done so much for
Slippery
this.
slope.
Yeah, I know.
Slippery slope.
I think that there is a solution there, though, because if you think about that handful of people, we don't want to leave them out, but our first goal is the membership. What
Right.
should we do for the membership? And then still think of those little things like you're bringing up. How do we help them? I highly doubt those people that are playing disc golf don't know a member. I'm sure they
That
know a
could be.
member, and they can very easily get a guest pass and continue their use with their friends and family that they're playing
Yeah.
with. It won't seem like
Or
anything
introduce
is a
them
change.
to a member if they don't know one.
Right.
But I just don't see locking them out of a facility that they continue to assist us with.
Right.
And if we didn't have them, for us to upgrade that equipment or replace equipment if it got damaged by whatever, vandalism
We
or
had to
weather.
replace one of the baskets because a tree fell on it.
Yeah, that kind
last
of thing.
year
And I'm
at this
sure
time.
that they benefited us in that replacement.
And going back to the grandfathering, and there's a lot of reasons why I don't think we would want to go down that road. But also remember, if you using Trailblazers once again as a good example, I'm sure they have members come and go. You know, then maybe they move out of town or whatever, and then the new ones come in, and so you have this constant group that benefits the trails. And so I would have to think that it would be similar with the disc golf. It may be the 6 or so people, and maybe a lot more than that, I don't know. But maybe they might move out and someone else, and as the course gets to be known, it may increase in usage. So it's definitely not an easy decision on this one, you know.
So I thought it would be good for us to look at, because if we as a Rules and Regs Committee wanted to suggest it be public, non-member use, then we need to add it to the policy. If not, and we think it's a larger conversation, we don't have to do anything to this today, and bring it to let us all talk about it on the full board for what the future should be. But if there was a consensus, easy, that we needed to add it today, we could.
There isn't.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it should go through the full board.
Okay.
Do you want it to go to the board at the next GM meeting?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Can it be at the work session? We already have a full agenda.
We have a pretty packed agenda, but it's whatever. I would think that this could be a lengthier conversation, so it might be something
And history needed.
that we would want to go to the GM meeting.
Okay. Okay, go back to the list. Next is policy 9.04. 9.04 was brought by Sandy Fostick, made a suggestion that we should look at. And that is, in your packet, you can see her statements. I'm going to see if I can read just that one. Ruth indicated at one of her last online meetings that she would like to add the word volunteers to the policy. Number 1 should read, neither board, management, nor staff, nor volunteers shall endorse any candidate running for the board or for any other political elected office. So that is adding, because right now it is board and management, we would be adding staff and volunteers to not being able to endorse candidates for the board or any other political elected office.
I don't agree with volunteers.
Yeah, I don't either.
Why would we harness them when they are simply giving of their time? They're not elected, they're not appointed, well, they are appointed on committees, but they're still volunteers.
They still get their own personal opinions.
Sure.
Yes.
And frankly, so do all of us. Have our own personal opinion that we, as long as we say, right? Hello?
I'm sorry, I was reading.
Board members have an opportunity to express our own personal opinion regarding candidates or anything else, as long as it's not confidential, right?
Correct.
Thank you.
And I'm not going to try and stop you from expressing your viewpoints ever.
I think the problem comes in when you're saying, I'm a board member of the POA and I,
Right.
you know.
Using your position to endorse.
Exactly. I endorse so-and-so for the city council. That's overstepping the bounds, and that's what this policy is meant to curb.
Because I did get asked on the last election my personal opinion on who to vote for. I shared my husband's personal opinion instead. But I do feel like I should have the right to do that.
Sure.
As a person, not as a board member, but as a person who agrees with my ideals that I would want to work with. But anyway, back to this. Jerry, any other comments?
Mm-mm.
What about staff of the POA?
Yeah, I don't think staff should.
No.
Take a stand.
We don't, they should remain neutral.
When you say staff, does that include all 400 employees, or are we just talking about senior staff?
I read staff as every single employee.
Okay.
Now,
Then we ought to
policing that's
say,
not going to be easy, and we have, I think the last time we did the stats, it was 64% of our employees are property owners. I think that's about 2 years old, so it could be off a little bit, but it's probably about 2/3 of our employees are members.
how are you going to stop a waitress or a groundskeeper
And
from...
you really run up against protected activity of an employee as well. So
Yeah.
there's HR, employment law issues that you come up against if you're trying to restrict speech of employees,
Yeah.
especially off company time. Now, if you want to say on
Yeah.
company time,
Yeah,
Maybe.
while they're being paid,
mm-hmm.
they don't have any opinions of their own. They're working for the POA. But, and I can see limiting senior staff or
Does that
whatever.
run
you-
afoul of the same HR rules you
Yeah.
just referenced?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It is currently written that way, though. Neither the board nor management shall endorse any candidate running for the board or any other political elected office.
Well, I'd take volunteers. Well, no, it says number 1 should read.
Yeah, so it was adding staff and volunteers to what's
Okay.
already currently written.
So staff, I mean, I guess you'd have to define what's management and what's staff.
Mm-hmm.
But again, yeah, I mean, you can't expect 400 employees.
I don't think
To-
that should be limited on the volunteers, no.
Oh, for sure, not the volunteers. But I think you need to define staff, and it ought to be pretty limited.
How about using your words that you used just a moment ago, limit it to senior staff? I'm sorry, senior management kill staff,
Kill
kill
volunteers.
volunteers. And it still runs afoul of the HR rules.
I was just going to say, I'll reserve the right to make a slight adjustment to that to
Okay.
make sure that we're not,
Okay.
I think we can figure out a way to say either during company time or some kind of a, and out.
That would make sense.
Yeah.
During company time,
Mhm.
senior management.
Because I think the intent is that we're not using our position as senior, as management, to influence an election in any way. I think that's the intent of the policy. It's probably not as tight as I would like it, so I like the suggestion, just would like the leeway to make a little bit of an adjustment on the language.
I get a ton of calls and emails around election time with just this question, and I give them the same answer. I encourage you to read their bios, to watch their videos, and make an informed decision. I give them the same answer every single time.
Now, I think the intent of the suggestion was to ensure that nobody is using any private information to influence an election. And so I have to ask Tom, your staff and volunteers, committee volunteers, everybody is well aware that it is not okay to use collected emails or phone numbers that are collected during POA business. We cannot use those. Nobody can for an election.
So the easy one is POA, our POA database. That is sacred ground. I mean, that is, you don't touch that. Okay. Where the challenge is so we have, what is the email address that goes to Debbie Sorensen? Not to pick on her.
Yeah,
it is.
probably the
The
most
meet
used,
and
though.
greet one.
Yeah, it's
Biggest.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
it's like we've created a specific email address, like
For meet and greet.
interested in moving to Bella Vista at bvvpoa.com. That's not it. I can't remember it.
Yeah.
Okay, so that email actually gets then routed directly out, and it goes to our volunteer that is coordinating the meet and greets. So it comes to our system, bounces, and goes out to that individual who is a volunteer. That volunteer has been wonderful in volunteering countless hours of the time, bringing together large groups. We have one coming up this Saturday that they're anticipating, it's going to be Zoom, but they're anticipating 70 people in attendance. So that's a lot of coordination time. So did the POA give this volunteer the email address? I don't know. If it's in our database, that's totally different. We already talked about that. That's sacred ground. This is, it's bounced, you're sending in, you're interested in a meet and greet, but it still has a bvvpoa.com address. So is it protected information? Is it not protected because it's going directly to a volunteer?
I'd say it's protected.
If it's a POA,
If it's a
Email.
POA email address, it's protected. Right? Wrong? Doesn't matter?
That's why we're talking about it, because it is
Yeah.
gray area.
But
Maybe that's not
legally,
great.
is it a gray area, or is it?
I think it is, yes,
that's too bad.
it's not stored in our database.
Yeah.
it did not come from our
I
database.
I
It came
still
from the
think
person
it's-
emailing.
Exactly.
I still think because it's easy enough to say if emails are collected from an email address that's BVVPOA, those email addresses are not for use by, or for any other purpose than, it's gotta be a way to state this.
Mhm.
For any purpose other than the specifically stated purpose,
Correct.
whatever the wording is. I feel pretty strongly about that.
Okay, but let's say that same volunteer knows a ton, knows a lot of, has a lot of friends, okay, so a committee
Okay.
member or something like that. We have some property owners that have friend email databases that are in the hundreds.
That's fine. That's their
Yeah,
friend.
that's theirs.
And then you've got, golf groups. POA's got nothing to do with those. There's huge databases there. And frankly, I've tried to tap into those before I was on the board, for another purpose, and was pretty much shot down by the presidents of the golf clubs.
I mean,
that
I wouldn't
know-
have a problem if I'm sure Doug can come up with better phraseology, but maybe emails sourced through, or something like that, derived, sourced, provided.
Through a
Maybe we kind of just use a lot
POA
of,
email, yeah.
I wouldn't have any problem with that. I mean, the volunteer still is allowed to have their own opinion, but if they're coming from a BVV POA email address, then you should use those
Right.
email addresses.
Yeah.
But if any member even, and that's where I want to be careful not to say, it was suggested to me to say POA sanctioned events, we should not be using emails collected at those. But then again, I have to think to the future. If I ever wanted to host an event, a kayaking poker run that I've been thinking about doing, or a dog fundraiser, and if people come there and the POA has approved it, it went through committee, it went through the board, and it is a POA sanctioned event, I am still a member hosting an event. And if I collect emails to my personal email address, I will be able to use them for whatever I want.
Yeah.
So that's where I think sourced through a POA email is a good suggestion, because that's very specific. That example was me as just a person, not board member, by the way. Example. So Doug, that kind of changes what the suggestion was,
Yeah.
and kind of alters what was already there.
You're looking at adding maybe another number there under.
Yeah. Under guess.
Section 1.
Oh, not the wrong one, sorry.
904, section 1.
One.
Maybe a number 3 that talks about email addresses.
Okay. Would you mind drawing that up, and can we approve it by email?
Sure.
Is that okay with you guys?
Yep.
Any other discussion on that?
No.
So now we've got section 6.
Is it section 6?
Article 3 of the bylaws.
Yeah, Article 3, section 6.
Oh, Article 3, Section 6. Thank you for reminding me. So again, a suggestion by, I want to get the name correct.
Sandy.
No.
Keith
No?
Jester?
Jester.
I want to say
No.
Keith Jester.
Oh. That was a different thing.
Suggestion by member Keith Jester at 29 Neffwood Lane. Would like us to review the qualifications to run for the board. And his first suggestion was any board of director must physically live in the city of Bella Vista. They cannot just own property in Bella Vista. We'll let you guys discuss.
No. I think that's not really right, because they're paid, they bought a membership share, and that's the way this was set up to begin with. And no, I don't support that one.
I think it's important. I received an email from a property owner, and what I pointed out was we have 39,000 lots. On those, we have 14,500 homes. So doing the math, we have a significant number of unimproved property owners. They need representation also. They have different interests, different motivations, but they're still an owner. And so now, if a resident And if a member is voting and they feel very strongly that a board member should live here, then that might influence their personal vote. But having representation, I mean, in today's age of Zoom and tech, everything is, I could see that maybe an out-of-state property owner is a member of the board one day. Why not? They attend virtually, as long as they put in the time and the effort. Why not? In my opinion.
Because I think the one thing we've all got to understand is the board member represents everyone. A board member who is not a resident does not just represent non-residents. A resident board member doesn't represent just that section. When elected, we represent everyone. And to have that differing representation on the board is needed. We want to have that. I would never want to discourage that. Move on to the next one.
I'd like to just go on the record as saying I recused myself from this discussion.
Understood.
No. No.
It was a cheap shot.
There are so many cheap shots.
Second suggestion for Mr. Jester was any board of director replacement or appointee must have previously demonstrated an interest within the past 3 years to be on the board by actually being a certified candidate for an open position.
I guess I don't disagree with that. And if history, in recent history, nobody has been appointed to the board who hasn't run for the board in recent history.
Mike Abb was a
Candidate when I was.
It says for the past
no, but
3
he
years.
served on the board, then ran as a candidate.
No.
No?
He ran as a
Okay.
candidate.
Oh, he did.
He did.
Okay,
He
I
ran.
stand corrected.
When Jerry Hover and I and David Welchel ran 3 years, 2.5 years ago.
Okay, then.
And then
Bruce,
he was appointed
recently.
shortly after the election, and then he was appointed again recently.
David Welchel was appointed,
Appointed.
then ran and
Ran.
was reelected.
Right?
Jim Abrahamson, same thing.
Hatcher.
Bruce Portello, the same
I don't know about
thing.
I don't know.
I'm not sure.
Didn't he take over remove board member? Yeah, so there's two examples of board members
That didn't run,
that didn't run, were placed on the board.
and then did
and
run.
Some subsequently did run.
Yeah. And then Mike did run and didn't get on the board for
Correct.
the election, and he was appointed. Trust me, I'm right.
No, no, I'm not. No, I'm not debating with you, Marion. Oh, no.
I guess I don't have a problem with saying that they have to have actually run in an election within the past 3 years before they were appointed. I'm not sure what it proves. Does it prove anything?
What if none of those previous people want to be appointed?
Well, then you have an issue.
Yeah, because we had, in 16, we had to delay the deadline on the submission of board applications because we only had 2, and we got a third one submitted in February, I think it was.
And there were obviously 3 positions open.
And there was 3 positions.
Well, then, no, I guess that's not such a hot idea.
And my concern, in a perfect situation, want to make sure that you get the most qualified candidate possible to fill that position. And that most qualified person may or may not have run previously.
Yeah. Well, like this time, this election, the email that we got after the fact from the fellow, well, no, it was before the election, but it was after the time, the cutoff date for putting your
Correct,
name in.
correct.
And he was like, I didn't know. I'm new here. I didn't know. Where would I have found that out?
Mhm.
And of course, you told him all the many places that it was published. But then again, he was new and he would have been interested. And, you know, hopefully his interest will remain and, because,
Sign
I
up
mean,
next
looking at
time.
his resume, well,
That's pretty good.
yeah.
You know, a
So-
couple of years ago, the board, I think there was a total, for one of the positions that was open, had a total of 12 people apply. I think only 9 interviewed.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good pool from the board to look at and select the best candidate as opposed to a narrowed field
Right.
that might only be a handful of people.
In the saying though that, I agree with you on part, but we're talking about the vacancies.
I haven't gotten to that part yet.
No, I done got ahead of you then. Okay.
Well, yes, vacancy,
Well,
sorry, yes, it is vacancy because that's what would
Keith
cause
Jester is
for a
talking
need
about
of-
that too, in item 2.
Yes,
Yeah.
And Sandy's talking about it
As
in
well.
relation to Article 3, Section 6.
We could just talk about both at the same time. Sandy has a different suggestion, but kind of the same topic, that the last paragraph should read, however, if the vacancy occurs between the time of ballots for election have been printed, an annual meeting of members for that year, the vacancy will be filled by the candidate with the highest number of votes out of the remaining candidates that were on the ballot. If the candidate does not accept, it should be offered to the subsequent candidates. If no candidates who ran accept the vacant director position, the vacancy will be fulfilled pursuant to the bylaws in Article 7, or no, 12, of the Articles of Incorporation by the newly elected board after the annual meeting. So, technically two different parts, but kind of the same discussion.
Having this, since this is the first time I've seen this, I guess I'd like time to think about it and maybe talk about it at the next R&R meeting,
Okay.
because I haven't really had time to read it through. The only thing that caught my eye was, she says, I believe Section 6 should be rewritten to reflect the fact that whenever possible, the director should be duly elected. Well, in the election, the only people who are duly elected are the first 3 vote getters. The number 4 isn't duly elected to anything. So,
That's a good point. That's actually something that caught my attention too, and I went back and looked. And when you go back and read, I'm going to get this wrong because there were 3 different things. You might know right off the top of your head. But there was a paragraph that says duly elected, but then you have to go back and look at a different section that says what those are. And that's when it goes
Yeah.
into, if it's between this time and this time, this is what happens, and lays out the rules.
Yeah.
So just the duly elected doesn't actually refer to an election. It's the correct process to follow to a point or.
That's exactly right. And it's a good job, Tia. Give you your honorary law degree because it says in one of the sections that, can be duly elected by the board.
Yes.
Which is, that is duly elected because there's a policy in place to govern how the board does that.
Hey, I got one right. But yeah, I don't mind giving us a chance to look at it more. They're 2 great suggestions. There is room for improval.
approval?
Yeah, it's a new one.
Improvement.
Improvement. I think we could.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Does either of y'all have any new business? Anything else? Oh,
Yeah, yes. Okay, So,
Yes.
T was busy. And there are about 24 references to the use of the word guidelines, which is not very specific, as opposed to the word policy or procedure or rule. And so Tia went through and located about 24 uses of that, and some of them are absolutely need to be changed. And so Doug and I went through, and Tammy was helping me quite a bit today. We went through and we removed all of them. We got a couple additional adjustments that need to be made. It doesn't change the substance of any of these policies. For example, on 1.03, currently says guidelines for association committees, and what we're recommending is that we strike everything and just have association committees. So it clearly does not change the substance of it. None of these do. Under, that's not a good example. Under policy 3.01, guidelines is for suspension of membership privileges. We just struck that and just went suspension of membership privileges. So really straightforward changes. So what we're proposing is that, first of all, we got to finish it. We're almost done with all of them, but we recommend that we come back, we come to the board, and I think we can come to the board this Thursday. And what we can do is we can make copies of all of these changes and email them out to the Rules and Regs Committee, so that you can verify all the changes are not substantive.
Are these going to require 2 readings and?
Yeah, it will require 2 readings, but we're trying, as we've gone through and looked at these, we're trying to figure out a way that we can group, maybe here's 15 that you're only removing the word guidelines, so, you know, the motion would read,
List those 15,
Yes.
but
not read every single one and vote every single one. So if we have just one change and it's the same for all 15, I think we can come up with a system to do it more
quickly.
rapidly. But there may be a
Yeah, 'cause
couple where we had to add a couple of
Have to be
words that
separate.
you might have to
Yeah.
do separately.
Because
so.
I had said, you know, if it was going to get to be a real chore, I had said, you know, let's do like 5 of them at a time until we get them done. But if we can lump them together and get them done at once.
I think we
perfect.
can, and I think we can do it in an efficient manner that will eliminate the use of the word guidelines, which is, you know, like I said, it's very ambiguous.
That was a good idea. that
Yes. Thanks to Jerry Hover.
Jerry Hover had, yeah.
So we'll have this for the Thursday meeting. We'll send this out once it's done to the R&R committee.
Okay. We hadn't really talked about it or told, like, kind of recapped what this is. So just any membership that's listening, I want you guys to know that it's the entire policy manual. If you look up every one of them, we went through, and what we're trying to do is change the word guideline to either be stricken or to be changed to policy or any suggestion that fits that policy, because we all agree, right? You agree. Jerry Hover had a great suggestion that a policy is a policy. It should not be up for interpretation. Guideline is up for interpretation, so we just want to make it more official
Yeah.
and clean up. That's all this is. Okay. Thank you for trying to make it shorter.
I'll work on that.
Okay, anybody else? Next meeting date? Any suggestions?
Couple of weeks. The 4 o'clock thing works out good for me, just in case anybody's interested.
With work from home, it's fine for me now too.
Okay. So I would, 2 weeks would be September 1st.
September 1st. I can do Tuesday, September 1st. After that, I will be celebrating my anniversary, so. Can't be on the Thursday that we normally do.
Okay. Well, today's Tuesday.
Yeah, Tuesday worked fine with me on the 1st. Sorry, you turned yours off. Do you want to look at a calendar? I can help you get an appointment.
No, the first, I'm going to guess it
You sure? We can do Wednesday. You'll be here on the
We're doing
1st.
him a favor.
4 o'clock?
4 o'clock,
Yeah.
September 1st.
If there's any conflict with the room, just let us know. We'll adjust. Okay. You ready to adjourn? Any motion? All in favor? You don't get to vote.
I was going to go with the gavel, but I realized